let me get us up to date on where we are with this case. Alston, as you mentioned, from West Virginia football player leading the charge to sort of get the NCAA to loosen restraints on what colleges can give or not give to athletes. So the Ninth Circuit, with a court before the Supreme Court, said, hey, there's no restrictions on what they can do as long as it's education related. Okay, so we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
The Supreme Court said that lower court, the Ninth Circuit out of California, they said, yeah, we're in. That's the deal. 9-0, the Supreme Court unanimously agrees with the plaintiffs, the players, that there are no restrictions on benefits that schools can give to players as long as they're education related. What does that mean? That means internships. That means computers. That means study abroad. That means internships that relate to somehow to their education. It's hard to define. But let me just say, what before we get to questions, what it is not. And I do think this is coming, but what it is not is pay for play.
Okay, so I appreciate you saying that it is not, because you are, I feel like lawyers are like doctors. You can't say a definite until it actually is, because there's so much that has to happen for something to become a definite. I understand. But with Kavanaugh, I like beer.
I still like beer.
Brett Kavanaugh, I bet you he used to just house beers or whatever, and he probably still does, especially after making a statement like he made. It sounded like, although this is about educational stuff, it sounded like with the broader picture, and if we could pull up these quotes, by the way, the general sense from Kavanaugh was basically like the NCAA is not above the law. Everybody else has to pay their workers to make the vast amounts of money that they are making. The schools are conspiring with competitors to pay no salaries to the workers who are making the schools billions of dollars on theory that consumers want the schools to pay their workers nothing. Then also went on to say, to be sure the NCAA and its member colleges maintain important traditions that have become a part of the fabric of America. Game days in Tuscaloosa and South Bend. Shout out South Bend, by the way, here in Indiana. The packed gyms and stores in Durham. The women's and men's lacrosse championships on Memorial Day weekend. Track and field in Eugene. Spring and baseball, World Series, Oklahoma City, Omaha, the list goes on, but those traditions alone. So it was nice. This is the sandwich technique that you lawyers love doing. Let's go ahead and build it up at the front. All right, then let's slide in like the piece of meat, the big problems we have, then put the bread back on down at the bottom. But those traditions cannot justify the NCAA's decision to build a massive money-raising enterprise on the backs of student athletes who are not fairly compensated. Nowhere else in America can businesses get away with agreeing not to pay their workers a fair market rate on the theory that their product is defined by not paying their workers a fair market rate. And under ordinary principles of antitrust law, it's not evident why college sports should be any different. The NCAA is not above the law. Was that Kavanaugh saying, and you have a law degree and everything like that, you know this much more than me, is that him saying, hey, whatever other ones that you guys think is the right push to get this, if it makes its way to the Supreme Court, we're on your side? Is that what he's saying? Like, hey, let's start cooking these. I know the education one was tip of the iceberg because you had means for actual law and grounds for actual thing. Let's get that other shit in here too. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, he's setting up the stage.
Yes!
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, I like beer. I still like beer. I like college football. Those motherfuckers should be paid, though. I like this. A good move by him, I think.
Pat, you're coming to my class next. I need you to set me up like that, and then the students will just soak it all in. So listen, Kavanaugh is setting up for the next time. Most of us saw Kavanaugh, as you said, last time publicly in his confirmation hearings and everything that came out of that. Who knew that Justice Brett Kavanaugh would be the champion of the United States Supreme Court for student-athlete rights? Even in his questioning of oral arguments back a couple months ago when this case was heard, he was strident against the NCAA. He was after them. Like, why is this there? Why are we still doing this? All the things you just read, he was forecasting when he was asking the questions. And he wrote a savage, scathing opinion against the NCAA. Now, let's temper it. That is still not beyond education-related benefits. But he's saying to the NCAA, and Jeff Kessler, the lawyer who's represented NFL and NBA players, you come here next time, I'll still be here, and we're going to go further.
Yeah, he'll still be there.
And that's
that was
basically what he's setting the stage for, because he's saying the NCAA is stuck to this principles of amateurism for 100 years. We're outdated. As you said, we got these multi-billion-dollar contracts. We got a different stage of NCAA athletic money, business of sports. We can't just hold on to this amateurism anymore. So now we have education-related benefits. Well, as of today, Pat, you can't be a school that stops them from giving some fancy computer. You can't be a school that stops them from giving some high-paid internship. You can't be a school that does this stuff. Down the road, we'll see what happens with pay for play. But right now, anything tethered to education, the Supreme Court says, yeah, NCAA can't stop that. You're done.
Do you think any of the other justices even realize what type of racket was going on with NCAA and the athletes? Or do you think that they are so, I assume you're busy as a justice in the Supreme Court, and you said there's only been a handful of sports things that have ever made their way up there. Is it, and I assume there'll be more and more younger I don't know. I'm not even getting into that. I saw that made its way into my timeline, and if it makes its way into my timeline, that is not good when it comes to that whole thing. I knew Kavanaugh, though, before this particular statement because of his performance at that thing or whatever, but do you think he potentially was the one in there that had to lay out the case on why the NCAA is such bullshit, and was that why it was 9-0? Or do you think the Supreme Court would have always been fully on the back of the student athletes if they had known that there was this type of racket going on? Were they just kind of oblivious to it, you think?
Yeah, I think they knew it was a 9-0 decision, unanimous decision. This was Gorsuch, Justice Gorsuch, who was the newest justice before Kavanaugh, wrote the majority opinion. He wrote the main opinion, and then Kavanaugh, for good measure, took all these shots in a concurring opinion. Yeah, it was 9-0. I didn't think there was a Justice Breyer during the oral arguments. I thought he was kind of squarely in the camp of the NCAA, but lo and behold, no, it's 9-0. Listen, you just mentioned something, the changing world of sports. Take this bigger picture. 3 years ago, the last case in the United States Supreme Court about sports was sports betting, where New Jersey beat back the NCAA, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, hockey, saying, no, you can't stop sports gambling. And then it started in the States, and here we are today. It's awesome. You've got a company like FanDuel sponsoring a big national show, I heard
International. Yeah, thank you. They are sponsoring. Hey, hold on. They're sponsoring national shows, too. They needed that. You know what I mean? They only had regional shows, then they got national shows. It really stinks for Mark Emmert, who, is always a guy who seems to stick his face into the cameras when adversity strikes. Not a guy that hides it all or relies upon a word that they made up. Amateurism was made up by them, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? He's
some
already
fake word. So I can't go into court and say, the Ty Schmidtism of this particular thing is why it has to happen. It's like, what is that? Well, it might be a word that we made up, but it makes sense. It's like, I never understood how that fucking worked. Like, well, it's amateurism. It's like, you made that word up. So you can't just make up a word and that be your defense. Like, that's just not how this whole thing works. Happy to hear Mark Emmert might have to take some shrapnel in this entire thing. What's on, Connor?
Yeah, Andrew, you just mentioned recruiting. So for this to, really work, are they going to have like a fixed rate for everybody? Or will schools like Bama, LSU, Ohio State have like more of a leeway to, give players more money?
Look for Houston.
Houston, yeah.
Houston's got oil money down there. Look for signings.
The thing the NCAA always worries about is abuse, and this is going to happen. You see the arms race that always happens with the facilities, the coaches' salaries, trying to get the best players. You know that's going to happen again, and that's really what scares the NCAA the most, is that we're going to have a two-tiered system, if we don't already, with the haves and the have-nots and other schools having trouble keeping up. But listen, that's going to happen. The free market is already take care of it. And when the NCAA cries that we're going to lose athletes, we're going to lose sports, the natural response is, well, don't pay coaches $12 million. Take $5 million of that and support the other sports. And then they say, well, it's an arms race. So it's this circular reasoning. And one thing about Emmert, Pat, I liken him to Roger Goodell because he's not the one making decisions.
No,
he's taken the bullets.
No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. He goes like this. Hey, when shit starts popping off, you know what Mark Emmert does? It's awesome to watch every single time he's gotten so good at it. You ready? It's like a tornado drill in his office. He hides. He just doesn't say a thing. He goes under his desk and says, don't ask me. It's amateurism. Fuck off. That's what he says. It's amateurism. Get out of here. It's right down the road here in Indianapolis. I see him do it. He just gets under his desk and lets everybody else fight his wars. And he says it's amateurism. That guy's done for, Brent. You know it.
He just got a contract extension.
Fuck
just
that.
Got it. Tens of millions, right? So
Jesus.
The college president's part of his job is take the bullets so they don't have to. You don't know college presidents. You know Emmert, he's the face. And he's taking the heat so they don't have to.
How will they adjust? They won't survive. This is just like there's going to be leagues that pop up. I think that's why the old.
Here's what I'd leave you with, Pat. I think NCAA sports is going to be a two-tier system. There's going to be NCAA regulating some sports, and then there's going to be big-time college basketball and football. Something else. It's not going to be regulated by a body in Indianapolis anymore. I think there's going to be a change afoot where we're going to look back in 50 years and like, really, the NCAA regulated college football?
Yeah.
Like, that's weird.
Yeah, I agree. And I think at one point, they sold their right to name a champion to the BCS, and now they have the playoff, which is cool, and it's an ever-evolving time. And I can see why traditional old-school college folks aren't happy about the future potentially looking glim. But if the NCAA and the athletes could figure out how to make it work without there being abuse, which is definitely going to happen, I think it could survive. But at this point, it's going to be tough with how much money's out there.